with that, we are officially audible to the rest of the internet.
Hello,
Evening, folks.
stream.
Let's get everything loaded up and get ready to start release party.
Hi, Red. I hope you're doing all right. Congrats on getting first.
There we go. I don't remember which template I had set up. What's up, Red Dragon?
Boys.
Welcome to the stream. Hope all is well. I am joined here by Bits Blight, who
Hello.
helped work on this project. And once we get into it and start going through stuff, I'll kind of explain what their involvement in it was throughout the whole thing. I'm going to call you like my creative consultant, Bits.
Okay.
Since in addition to the art that we're going to see, you also kind of formed a lot of the ideas that we're going to see in the stuff that's in the video itself.
Yeah. Hi, Red. I'm excited.
So let's see, we got everything here. I'm going to just wait a minute or so as people kind of filter in, and then we'll get started. So
Yep.
for the stream today, what I'm showing off, kind of like our previous release parties, is the compilation video that I've put together that showcases all the tracks. It's got some graphic stuff that goes with each track. And what we're going to do is we're going to start the intro, play through the first one. I need to do some credits and shout outs after that one, and then we'll kind of talk about each track and sort of the creative process that went with it, and then we'll go sequentially through each one and pause after each one to talk.
Okay. Sounds good.
And there may be other folks from the Talk Secure affiliated group that might swing through. We'll see.
Yeah.
If so, welcome them warmly as you would. And so what we'll do is we'll kick off the first one now, and we'll start trucking through here. And you folks can let me know if I need to adjust anything with the on-stream volume. I know Bits can see this on our side because I'm streaming through Discord. But for those that are watching on Twitch, let me know if you have trouble hearing any of the audio, and I'll try and fix it. So with that, let's get started and take a look at this year's Halloween release, Bloodmoon Rites.
Oh my gosh.
gonna take myself off mute. So before I go into this here, I'm gonna go back a little bit. Not gonna play anything over again, but I want to hold on the title card art, which is there. It's gonna be a little bit fuzzy because
That
the
is
HD version of this is still processing because I just uploaded it today. But shout out to Ryloaf over on Twitter and Instagram. Their credits are in the intro, and I got to remember to drop credits for both you and Rye in the video description when this thing goes live.
yeah. It's
But
gorgeous.
it's really interesting. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this album art since I've been kind of teasing it amongst our friend group for a bit. Rye is kind of a mix of like horror and kind of horror aesthetic-ish type stuff in the work they do. They're also an animator. And when I got in touch with them, they're actually someone that a friend of Froggy's knows. And so that's how I got their information. And so we started talking on Discord, and they agreed to do the artwork for this album. And so the title Bloodmoon Rites kind of hints at like a ritual of sorts, which is why you see my character in the front there. And it's a little bit tough to see in low contrast, but there's a bunch of these hooded figures kind of all around. And so the idea is like it's kind of an occult or summoning ritual, and the creature being summoned is a kind of nightmare demon version of my mascot, Tenpo, which was something we kind of developed. I said, here's what the little red creature that normally is on a bunch of my stuff looks like. How can you adapt that into some sort of infernal demon or whatnot? And this is what we got. It's a pretty wicked piece of art, and I'm really happy with the results.
Every time I look at it, I just like find more detail that I didn't notice the last time I looked at it.
Yeah, the perspective is kind of interesting. The fact that it's got like the kind of dripping blood moon in the back from the title.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very cool image.
It is very cool. You definitely have like the colors that are gonna keep coming back up over and over and over again. We got the reds, we got the greens.
Yep, and we're gonna see some of that theming in the accompanying art as we go through the tracks, and it's all kind of connected to the stuff that we talked about on the art development side. So we'll definitely get into that. Let me scroll.
That's such a pretty art.
Yeah, it's really cool. I may see if they're okay with me turning it into a shirt, because I think it'd make a cool shirt design. When you look
That
at it,
would make a cool shirt design.
it's really kind of painterly and almost has kind of like a sketchy look to it, like it's distorted.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that could adapt pretty well. Red Dragon says, I thought the moon was part of the note head. The coloring is kind of close, but if you look at it, you can kind of see there's a border. And so the moon is right behind the actual creature's head, but if it's kind of hard to see if you're looking at it from far away.
Yeah.
Hey, Iconic's here. Hey, what's up, Iconic?
Iconic.
Welcome to the launch party.
You only missed one song. You're good.
Yep, we went
You
through
can
the
look
first
at it
song.
later on YouTube.
That's correct. This stream is going to be on YouTube in the archives, and the original compilation video, which I'm showing on stream, will also be there. And so the first track here, Wandering Wraith, kicks off the release, and this one's meant to be kind of like an intro spooky-ish type song. It's got kind of a ghostly type of melody to it, especially when one of the choir synths comes in about 40% into the song.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly enough, this one was not the original version of this track. The intro track you heard when the video first started, and it intros all of us that were working on it, that was going to be this track originally.
Oh.
But I didn't feel like it really sounded kind of ghostly enough. So I actually recorded a different one. This was maybe halfway through the process. This was after you and I started talking for sure.
Yeah, I'm like, this doesn't sound familiar.
Um,
Because I thought you had shown me Wandering Wraith.
I did,
Or...
but the one I showed you was this version.
Okay.
But it was probably only a snippet of it, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you only showed me a little bit.
You've heard a couple bits of a few on here, and the vast majority you haven't heard yet.
Yeah.
And so one thing that
this is all surprising.
That's good.
Yeah.
One thing I try and do with all these releases is there's an intro track, or or like a non-album track that goes with the teaser for the project, which is what you heard in the beginning. And each album has its own kind of teaser track, and eventually I'm going to put those into their own release. So it's basically going to be like a teaser compilation because they're full songs, but you only hear like 30 seconds of them in the intro or the teasers. And so that's one thing I need to work on. Once I get enough of these things out, there'll be kind of like a compilation of all the different projects, and it's just going to be the names of the albums as the tracks.
Okay. Yeah.
And so for the art itself, kind of in line with the Wandering Wraith, I wanted to create something that was like some sort of spirit. And I didn't have a specific thing in mind, and we'll see something as far as what Bits worked on at the end. But I settled on this particular design with all of the kind of like highlights. I don't know if they're really like eyes, but they kind of look like eyes with the red bits.
Mm-hmm.
And then it alternates between one without the glowing, and then there's a little eye in the hood, and then it flips to the one that I'm currently paused on now. And we have a hydrate from TGI Ramen.
Thanks,
The Noodle Lord
Ramen.
himself is here. What's up, dude? Welcome to the stream. We are just getting started. We just went through track 1, so you didn't really miss much, just like we were telling Iconic a second ago. But anyway, the art itself and the art you'll see on the individual tracks was done by me, and then we'll talk about Bits' involvement as we kind of go through here as well. I was saying before we went live that I'm going to refer to Bits as my creative consultant. They were kind of instrumental in helping shaping a lot of the themes we'll see running throughout, in addition to doing actual concept work for the project, which again we'll show off at the end. Ramen says, heading home from work. All right, well, hopefully we can give you some interesting background music as we go through the release here.
It's going to have like the spookiest ride home.
It's good bus or transit music.
Such good bus and transit music.
And so, yeah, before we move on, this one ended up being a bit more slow in tempo compared to the version that was in the intro that you guys heard. But I guess for you, Bit, since you're hearing this in its entirety for the first time, feel free to give your thoughts on what you heard before we move on.
I do really like the slow tempo. The way that like some of the notes kind of carry themselves for a long time. Like it really adds to the eeriness of the song.
That was kind of the intent. I found for a lot of this stuff, and we're going to hear in some of these later ones, for doing kind of quote-unquote spoopy themed tracks, strings work really well for that, and choir synths work really well for that.
Yeah, the synth was really good in that one.
Or both. Some of these are going to have kind of like reoccurring mixes of choir voices and string instruments, and maybe some things that will be a little more surprising. And I'm going to navigate using the timestamps that are here. In the actual rendered video when this goes live, you should be able to jump between tracks using the timestamps if I did it correctly. But let's move on to track number 2. All right, I need to be careful where I pause here, but we can leave it there. I wanted the graphic to be on screen. So that was Coven Brand, the second track in Bloodmoon Rites. And so, one thing of note on the music side, we'll talk about the music and the art kind of in order.
Mm.
For a long time on my projects, folks who tune in on the jam streams and listen to me kind of noodle around and figure out how to create quote unquote music, I get the question of when are you going to do something rock sounding? Hey, Wazzy's here. Wazzy says, "Where's the vampire hunting song?" You're just gonna have to stay tuned and listen and find out. But people have asked me, they said, when are you going to do like a rock type album? And I always say I'm not really that skilled in composing like a rock type composition when it comes to music. This particular release is going to have more rock stuff, a rock kind of adjacent type of sound than anything I've ever done, which has been really
Okay.
interesting experiment when it comes to just learning, learning how to kind of change things with instruments and just create different types of sound. Oh, I did see we got Small Raku from Iconic.
You
All
gotta
right,
be smooth.
give me a second to do that. I'm gonna ride on your back.
Oh, okay.
Never ending story style.
Damn. All right. That's wonderful.
We have fun here.
Yeah.
All right, we'll put the timer on and we'll see how long it takes for me to remember to take it off and
Yeah.
return to normal. Wazzy asks, "Where's Grandma got raw dogged by a werewolf?"
I
It's a good
think that's
question,
like
Wazzy.
four
You're just gonna
tracks
have.
from. I'm
It's very
kidding.
specific though. I feel like the overall theming of the project so far might be outside of what you're talking about, but we'll see. There's a lot open to interpretation,
Hmm. Yeah.
so I'm not gonna overcommit or undercommit. You just have to listen and see. And
So
so,
back to the music.
and so back to music. So with Coven Brand being a bit more rockish, it the whole kind of idea of this one is it's supposed to sound like part of a ritual, kind of
Yeah.
something that involves, which we'll see through some of the art, especially the one Bits did for this particular song later. The idea that there is some sort of group or a group of entities that are performing this ritual, which is kind of signified when you hear the female choral synths come in kind of towards the middle.
Yeah, those really stood out to me.
It sounds like a chant,
Yeah.
which was kind of that was the intention when I was messing around with things to kind of mix in, since you can use choir synths just like any other instrument, but they really change the tone of a song. Like it can sound really gospely, it can sound kind of uplifting, or it can sound really ominous depending on what you pair with those
Hmm.
voices.
Definitely more on the ominous side.
That was kind of the vibe for the project overall, and
Yeah.
hopefully it carries through.
I think you're doing a great job so far.
Well, thank you. So for the track art itself here, we have a bunch of these are eyes in case it wasn't
It is very clear.
okay, because depending on how you look at it, it could be like little butterflies, like fireflies or something, the wings. But the idea was that I wanted to kind of convey that there's some sort of group, some sort of malevolent group that is here, and I thought a simple representation with the eyes coming and going as the track goes. And real quick, since Waz here, she's gonna yell at me for this, but all of the quote unquote animations you see, with the exception of one track I'll talk about in this whole release, was done with static images that were all done with different instances of whatever image. Some have two parts, some have multiple, like this. And they're just composited and layered in Vegas back to back, end on end until the track is over to show quote unquote animation. It's probably the most rudimentary unga bunga way to show animation, but I am not an animator.
Yeah. To
And
be
so
fair, when I try and do animation, it ends up being very, very convoluted, so I understand.
if I was an actual animator, then it would look a lot cleaner. But
I think it looked great.
Well,
Conveyed
good.
what you wanted it to.
Some of the effects are more subtle than others, and some are a bit more obvious, like this one. But we'll see. The last thing of note on the art, the actual brand itself, which is not like a brand deal. I'm sure people understand, like a branded mark. You think like Guts from Berserk with the cursed brand. This thing you see on the tile, like a cracked tile here, the symbol here, which I'm gonna call it like the bird rune, for lack of better terms. It doesn't have an official name. I want to point out that this design was created by Bits in our concept work and our prototyping for
And
the project. They came up with this
almost
rune.
entirely within like 3 seconds. I was just like, you want a rune? Okay. Draws out this little bird thing. Okay.
But it's very effective. It's a simple shape when you look at it, and you can tell it's doesn't have a lot of detail. But if you have like, you can see my cursor. No, you can't see my cursor. The triangle is the beak and the head, and then the other part is the tail on the right. And so what I did for the project, as far as the art goes, from this track on, this symbol and rune is going to be part of, I think, every single track art piece in
Oh,
some form.
wow.
And and so kind of like a through line across all the different tracks, we'll kind of see how this rune shows up and what it implies for the quote unquote scene. It's not going to be like anything really complex, but I took this design that Bits came up with and worked it into kind of like a running theme throughout. And so hopefully that'll be interesting when you folks see it. Iconic says simple but effective. It is simple but
Yeah.
effective. I think it would make a good t-shirt design too.
Yeah. Honestly, I could probably do that in an instant.
That is going to be one of my projects after this particular release, is getting more stuff onto the merch site so I can launch it before the end of the year.
Yeah. I gotta revamp mine, bring it back to life.
Yeah, I may have to pick your brain since I'm using the as fourth wall.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Same company.
yep, the one you recommended.
Hmm.
So there'll be more news on that forthcoming.
Soon
But yeah,
ish.
that's Coven Brand. Any other final thoughts before we move on?
Uh, is there a reason that you fragmented the kind of like plaque that you got going on, or is that kind of like a hint towards what's coming?
Oh, good question. So the idea behind the design itself, the red part, the red bit that you're
Mm,
talking about, the idea in my brain was this group of whatever it is that's creating this ritual around this symbol. They've inscribed the rune onto some sort of avatar or catalyst piece, and when they invoke the actual ritual and it goes into effect, it causes that catalyst to break.
okay.
And so originally I just had it broken up by the lines, but then I went in and I slowly dragged out the lower fragments to look like it's falling apart and falling
Hmm.
downwards. And so it's meant to kind of signify that we're going to see something related to this later.
Okay.
And I thought about animating the shards kind of falling down, and then that ended up being very difficult, so I didn't do it.
Understandable.
That is going to be a another through line through some of these, where I had a bunch of cool ideas, and then working with static pings in a video editing software proved to be more difficult. Animation's hard. Respect your
Animation is hard.
animators.
Respect your animators, 100%. Wazzy, you still here?
Oh, she's probably listening. I'm sure going to get an earful later about how she could have done it better, which she no doubt could have, but that's okay.
We're doing our best, Wazzy.
We are. It's all we can do.
Hmm.
All right. Let us move on to track number 3.
Also, you're still small.
It's only like an additional 5 minutes, I think.
Okay.
So I've gone like a half hour without forgetting to turn that off and return to normal, and everyone's just like, hee hee, he forgot to make himself big again.
Okay.
I think Iconic would point it out first out of everybody, because he's cool like that. Everyone else would have just said
Iconic's
nothing.
definitely pointed out stuff on my stream before.
Yep, that's okay. All right, things return to normal. Let's check out third track. This is Ecliptic Horizon. All right. I almost didn't catch that in time. That was track number three. Three, four, three. Can't count. Three, Ecliptic
Three.
Horizon. I did that last time we did one of these because I remember the order of the tracks, but I will forget what number they are. It's okay. Don't worry about it. So this one is a bit faster, I think, in tempo than the last one by maybe a hair. It's got almost kind of a march tempo to it in the rhythm. I did see Iconic pointing out the rune flickering off and on really adds the scene alongside the music. So this one, the image itself, I can jump over to that for a sec. It's supposed to be like a skyline with hills, like clouded hills with like an eclipse in the back, like a solar or probably lunar eclipse in the back. And if I was much better at syncing animation, I tried to get it to work this way. I would have the rune flickering on and off on beat. I was not able to do that effectively, so it is not quite on beat. It kind of comes and goes at a set interval. It's just not on rhythm. But that was kind of unavoidable with the low tech way I did this.
The music kind of felt like if you're playing like a turn-based RPG and you get in a fight. That kind of felt like that was kind of the vibe I was getting off of it. Really,
Yeah, it sounds
this
kind
is
of
like the
like,
best word I can think of is like intense.
yeah, it's ominous and kind of portentous in that it sounds like something is coming essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea in my mind when I was trying to design like the song and then matching up some imagery that would work with it, it's kind of like you're zooming out on the last scene a bit. So you're looking at kind of like a landscape view of where that ritual was taking place, which is signified by the rune flashing. And what this group is doing with this ritual and channeling this rune is affecting the world, which you're seeing with this literal like cursed moon or sun. And so it's kind of hinting that something is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And so hopefully that kind of came across as just like foreboding, I guess is a good word for that.
Yeah, 100%.
And
Definitely.
we'll see the rune kind of entering into the scenes differently. It's not always just going to be flashing on and off or in the same spot. Sometimes you might actually have to look a little bit closer to figure out where it is, but I think it's in every single scene going forward. I think. We'll see if I'm wrong. Thanks for the hydrate. I'm drinking water.
Don't worry, I'm drinking too.
Whenever I have to talk a lot, I need to make sure I drink a lot of water so my voice doesn't go. Yeah, I feel like this
Oh,
one it doesn't have a whole lot of like really complex layers. It's just kind of straightforward in the mood.
It definitely like is simple but gives off exactly what you want it to. And like you could look at the eclipse in a lot of different ways. Like it looks kind of like a crying eye, or if you looked at it a certain way, it could also look like it has a mouth. It's definitely up to interpretation.
That's right, which is kind of the intention behind that simple way of drawing things. If you like look at it from a little bit further away, it could also look like a mouth with a single tooth, which is
Hmm.
definitely not what I wanted because it looks goofy if you look at it that way.
I definitely got the eye first.
Good, good. Then it's
Yeah,
working as intended.
yeah.
I thought about animating the kind of dripping bits a little bit. Again, proved to be a little more complicated than I was capable of pulling off with this. We did get a stretch from Iconic, by the way.
Yeah. Ugh, that made me yawn. How dare.
No falling asleep. If my
I
music
don't.
puts you to sleep, that is entirely the wrong
That's.
intended effect.
I've had.
Hopefully not.
I've had a rough week, buddy.
I know. It's exhaustion, not boredom. That's what
I.
matters to
I
me.
promise you. Yeah.
Okay. Shall we move on to track 4?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
This one is Afflicted
This
Curse.
one's my favorite when I did the concept art for it.
Oh yeah, yeah, I could see that. Let's take a look or a listen. All right. That was Afflicted Curse. All right, someone messaging me on Discord and I'm jumping between windows here. I'll try not to do that.
That's all right.
So this one One thing I'll mention for this particular release that I think is going to probably change going forward on all of my releases up to now for the videos that all of you see that showcases all the tracks that are part of the release. They're always the full songs, which usually are a single repeat. So it's got the entire track and then it repeats once, and they're usually between like 3 and 4 minutes in length. What I'm probably going to do going forward is that the track compilation videos are going to show one repeat. And so it's going to shrink the length of the videos down a bit. And I made making that decision primarily one so it's a little bit easier to get through things quickly when I'm showing them off, but also so that people aren't sitting there looking at like an hour long video saying I'm not going to watch an hour long video. When it comes to things like potential animations like Wazzy did for Lost Kingdom, I think it'll help for that too. So if we do another one of those, she'll only have to animate like a minute and a half instead of 3 to 4 minutes, which would be good. And so you'll probably see shorter release videos for these going forward. But the actual quote unquote studio versions of the tracks that are going to be on Bandcamp, Spotify, Tidal, and all that will be the full ones without, you know, with the full repeats. Iconics off to eat dinner. All right, enjoy your dinner. We will probably still be here.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one thing I'm looking at for the future ones. It'll make the releases a little bit easier to digest, hopefully.
Yeah. Makes
Uh,
sense.
but for the track itself, so Afflicted Curse is related to the second track, Coven Brand. And I know Bits and I talked about this in the concept development side for the art. The idea of this one is this is the person who was quote unquote cursed by that marks experience once they realize that it hits them essentially. And so the art shows this sort of runic circle which appears in my mind. The concept is it appears underneath the person when they realize, oh, something's about to happen. And then when it shifts to like the more flattened version with the bird rune above it, that signifies the person actually getting cursed by the ritual.
Mm.
And so I think the what we kind of talked about before in concept is that it's not necessarily in the same place. This person could be somewhere else from the ritual, but is feeling the effect of the curse. And I'm trying to remember if for the art that you did for this one, if it just shows the person or if it's the group. But
It
the
just
idea,
shows the person.
okay, so it's like person getting cursed is having a bad time, and they're feeling the effects
Mhm.
of what this other group who's targeted them has put into play.
Yeah, they're yeah. I'll talk about the art later, but they're in a different place than the art for the other one.
Yeah, and so the song itself has some kind of parallels in themes, and even some of the melodies are similar to the ones for Coven Brand. It starts off really muted. You can hear like the beat and the bass line, but they're very muted, kind of signifying that it's slowly becoming apparent to the person who got cursed that this is happening. It's just not like a lightning strike. It's slow and sudden, and then all of a sudden, when the beat kicks in fully, you realize, oh crap, it's happened. And the
Yeah.
the beat for this one has kind of like an almost industrial sound to it. I took some like kind of clanking distortion effects and I put it on the drums, kind of sound like something a bit more kind of chunking instead of like lighter when it comes to the drums. So the tone's a little bit different, but if you listen to Coven Brand and this one back to back, you can tell that they're supposed to be connected.
I like that you put the vocals in there or the vocal synth in there again, but like closer to the end so you can it's still that build up to the actual like feeling of the curse.
Yeah, and the vocal melody and the rhythm of the vocal synth is different. But
Yeah.
if you kind of don't listen too hard, it's really easy to assume they're the same as the previous track. But I changed the rhythm up and I changed the note progression slightly so that it's not the same, but it's very familiar. And so I
Yeah.
guess if you think about it like thematically without trying to get like all pretentious with it, to me it's like the person who's suffering this curse is hearing like echoes of the chants of the ritual in their head from the group that's doing this to this person. And so that's what's kind of signified with that choral synth.
That's really good.
It's surprisingly effective. I need to take notes of what I did this year so I don't duplicate it for next year. But it was really fun messing around with those instruments because I put a lot of kind of strings, like I said, and choir stuff in a lot of the tracks, but I try to do it differently each time.
Mhm.
We'll see how effective I was at doing that. If everyone listens to it and goes, "Boy, that's a lot of copy pasted tracks," then I haven't done my job well.
It's good so far.
Yeah, it's fun though. This was a lot of fun to work on. Okay, moving right
Move on.
along. Shall we move on to one
Mortal Coils.
Mortal Coils, which you might have seen briefly because I can't pause on time. Let's check this one out. All right, so that was Mortal Coils. This one tonally is a bit different from the others, and to me, it kind of serves as a bit of a transitionary track, I think. But it slows the tempo down a little bit, and even though it's slower, it has kind of more of a bounce to it. And the way I kind of wrote this one, you hear it starts with the beat, and then you hear a couple different patterns of synth come in in order. They don't start at the same time, but they all move with a slightly different rhythm. It's very rapid, but it's different for each one. And the kind of intention behind that was to give it like this kind of lurking sound, like something slithering. And initially, I wasn't going to assign this track to Mortal Coils, and then I listened to it. I thought, well, that actually seems to fit fairly well. And it sort of just naturally seemed to line up. But it's an interesting kind of mood. To me, it sounds still kind of oppressive, but it sounds a bit more kind of mysterious. Like you don't really know what's lurking, but you know something is lurking, if that makes sense.
Totally get what you're saying there. I really liked the like overlapping synth, like where it kind of like the slithering that you were talking about. Like that wrinkles my brain. That was like such a nice sound to hear. It just like I don't know. I really like that track. I really like that track.
Oh, thank you. I'd have to go back and see where I recorded it. I want to say I messed with the sound panning on the high rapid synths that are coming in at different
Mm-hmm.
rhythms, because in my headphones, as I'm plugged directly into my sound system here, it sounds like they move around the listener a little bit. And
Yeah, and that's why I was like, it wrinkles my brain, dude. It was like tickling my brain the entire time. I
hopefully
liked it.
that comes across in the video, because I can't remember how it does sound channel compression when you render something into like a YouTube video, but the recorded audio tracks that are on the streaming platforms don't have any sort of like compression that'll affect that. And so if you listen to them on there, the panning should be a little bit more noticeable. But I'm glad that comes through, because I didn't really do that on purpose. But when I listened to it, it kind of, again, came together nicely. I thought, oh, that's kind of a perfect idea to pair with this particular track, even if it doesn't necessarily fit a narrative. To me, this is kind of like something that happens in between what we saw with the person and the ritual. This is kind of something, again, transitionary, that's sort of establishing some stuff we'll see coming up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Mortal Coils was a fun one to work on. That one, I think I did that one maybe towards the middle of the project as I was recording stuff and kind of cutting certain ones. There were some cuts I made that obviously didn't make the final track list, including like the first iteration of Wandering Wraith. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought the song's good, but then I wrote something that I thought fit better. So then I just booted stuff out of the mix and rotated in the ones I liked more. I do that on literally every project I work on. Like I record like 1.5 times as many tracks as I need, and
It's
sometimes
kind of how music works,
oh, I'm
honestly.
definitely as a, not like a not a formally trained musician. I'm like shotgun method in my strategy in a lot of cases, where I try and get ideas together, get them captured and recorded, and then get a whole pile of ideas, and then slowly start to pare it down towards what I think makes sense for an actual release. And then I move the other
Mm-hmm.
ones off into other projects, or I shelve them or whatnot. And so there's a lot that doesn't go into these that you guys might hear on a future project.
Yeah.
As far as the art goes with the snake, I kind of tried to create the idea of this otherworldly snake creature, and since it's quite literally taking from the title Mortal Coils, I wanted to go with like a snake wrapped around some sort of object. And I know you worked on a draft concept piece for this one too, but I didn't know if you wanted it included, so it's not part of the showcase at the end. But you did something kind of similar in what you drew as well, which I think was kind of a good parallel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And with the idea that it's coiled around some sort of like, again, catalyst or focal point with the jewel, and then just because I couldn't think of any other way to add like a visual element to change, it changes colors,
Mm-hmm.
and then it reverts back and it cycles between, was it orange, red, purple, or some order. And so
Yeah.
it's subtle. This one actually doesn't have the rune either. I was wrong.
I do really like how you designed the snake, though. It does look otherworldly with like the three eyes and then the shapes throughout its body. Like it's not what you'd expect from a snake. It kind of looks more like a basilisk.
Yeah, the idea was to take the basic shape and then give it details that are going to make it look unusual, or
Mhm.
otherworldly, like you put. And usually my strategy is like spikes or multiple mouths or eyes or
It's a
putting
good
body parts.
strategy though.
Oh yeah, like just look at my
It
Pokemon Infinite
works.
Fusion sprites.
Mhm.
Some of the ones I've designed, it's like, what if we just put a mouth here and made it the entire body?
Yeah. I do really like this one though.
Thank
That
you.
that was a really good track.
It's a fun one. It has a good mood to it, I think, and I think it's
Mhm.
danceable too because of its beat,
Oh yeah.
which it's always a plus. All right, moving on. Next one, Marsh Tomb. All right, that was Marsh Tomb. This is probably one of the weirder tracks on here. Of all the ones that I wrote, this one's probably the one that's got the most unorthodox composition to it, I think. Which is funny because it started off as just me saying I want to do something that's really similar to like a drum and bass track because everything has been a bit kind of moderate to slower tempo so far.
Mhm.
And then as it sort of evolved, the idea was that this is kind of like an environmental or level based theme if you're thinking of it in video game terms.
Mm.
It's supposed to sound murky, like something is impeding your progress.
Oh, I can totally see that.
And that's the reason why the one thing you never stop hearing the whole time is the bass line, which
Mhm.
sounds like this kind of fuzzy, kind of like almost grinding, like sludgy sound. And kind of effect, it's because scene wise, if I'm trying to justify what I did here, this is like a person who's going through like a marsh or like a bog and has to get through it in order to get to a certain destination. And you can imagine like you're wading through like a really deep mired wetlands, and you're just kind of like having to like slog through like the muck and everything else. And so, again, I'm not trying to get too pretentious with it, but that constant bass line that sounds like something is kind of dragging is meant to be like an impediment to your progress. And then you hear it start that way, and you hear the beat come in, which sort of picks the pace up a little bit. And in the back, there are little things like synths and like these kind of chime synths, and a little bit of a rapid string synth, I think, run through a slicer. But it's all in the background underneath that kind of like grinding, chugging bass. And again, got to connect it to the scene itself, because boy, do I'm not bad at doing scenes. I am very bad at doing scenes in general. But I wanted to create like a bog type scene with the quote unquote tomb is the white part at the end. But there's all of these things that are kind of just a jumbled mess in like a bog or a marshland. And that's kind of the way the track was comprised, which is why I named it that. And everything sort of takes a back seat to, again, the kind of like sludgy sound, but everything is just sort of mixed in a little bit. And I try not to make it random. It's not supposed to be chaotically random, but there's definitely a reason why you hear that sound more prominently than anything else. I just hope it's not too distracting.
No. When it comes in at the end with the string, I think it's a string. And it kind of sounds like something's approaching behind you and you can't quite get away from it. Like with the bass being heavy and it kind of feels like you're walking through like thick mud trying to like slowly make your way somewhere. And then it sounds like something's nearby and you can't quite get away from it. That's kind of like the vibe I got from it.
Oh, that's interesting. I can kind of hear that a little bit. It sort of sounds like you don't realize you're being stalked by something else as you're out here, but it becomes apparent once that change in the music kicks in. And then it
Yeah.
sort of builds a little. It doesn't go in like a really big, like climactic build, but it gives, I guess, the listener like a sense that something impending is kind of moving
Yeah.
in, like moving in for the kill, which that's not wasn't my intention, but that's a cool effect if that's what it sounds like.
It is, yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like to me.
Oh, then it was totally intentional.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
like the kind of vibe and environmental feel of like something that's restricting your movement and whatever is what I tried to go for. But everything else was really kind of an experiment of seeing like what different instruments and different orders and rhythms can kind of do for the listener. And so I figured people were going to react to this one differently. Like some people it might sound like a dance song, which it has the beat of a dance song,
Mhm.
but it's kind of like a slow, like a lurching dance. It's not like, you're going to be sitting here doing like high speed, like hard style jumping up and down so much. You could. You could dance to anything if you try
You
hard enough.
could. Yeah.
But
Just a Raku BPN dance challenge.
if I had a 3D model, if I had a 3D model that I could track, I would totally do something like that.
Uh,
I am an informally trained dancer.
are you?
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever talked to you about it, but I've mentioned it a couple times on stream. A long time ago, my older cousin moved to the area that I'm at to go to school, and he used to run a hip hop dance company, and so
Okay.
he taught me and my brother how to dance.
Ah, sweet.
My brother wanted to learn how to break dance. I wanted to learn how to break dance too, and I realized I'm too heavy. I'm quite literally too heavy to do some of the moves. But he taught us some interesting stuff. So, like I mentioned in other streams, back before the plague times, when it was safer to go to clubs, we used to go to like dance clubs and like dance battle people. It was fun.
That's wonderful.
I miss those days.
I literally have been to a club like once.
I feel like this is more of a soapbox than anything else. I don't mind clubs like dance clubs. They're okay, but my
Mhm.
ideal social setting is something more chill. Like if
Yeah,
I'm gonna go out
100%.
socially,
I'm the same way.
yeah, if I'm gonna go out and hang out with people in a social setting, and it doesn't matter if you're drinking or not, really, but I prefer to go somewhere like chill and mellow with like a good vibe. And rather than like going somewhere really rowdy and doing shots, I'd rather go somewhere nice, buy something and sip something nice, and just kind of like chill and vibe than as opposed to get rowdy. But I've done both. I just can't recover
Yeah.
from rowdy as easily as
Yeah.
I get
I
older.
almost I almost got rowdy last night. You would not have seen me today, but I
But you didn't,
managed.
and you were here. I see Iconic is back. Hopefully you had a good
Welcome.
dinner. We were just going through Marsh Tomb, and we're getting ready to move on to the next one. Any final
We didn't
thoughts?
really talk about the art.
Yeah, the art is again simple, and it's kind of supposed to be like a messy composition of things,
Mhm.
or cursed golf course.
Cursed golf course. I didn't see it before, but I see it now. No, like I thought it was coming across even with the simple shapes. Like this is a building in the middle that's supposed to signify a tomb, and like the walk up to it is kind of like riddled with bones.
Well, I'm glad it
That's the
comes
vibe that I
across,
got for.
especially after the next track we're gonna see. My Google search was filled with a lot of searches for like crypts and mausoleums for a bit. As a person who hasn't really
Yeah,
toured a lot of crypts and mausoleums, I'm like, okay, what do they look like? Okay, I came up
yeah.
with an idea for the. I think it's the next track.
Okay.
Uh, but I had to do some research and kind of adapt some ideas and take a few liberties. But I think it turned out decently.
All right,
You
let's go.
you'll be the judge. Next one, cryptic. that was the track Cryptic. A bit of a pun on this one. Those who don't know me know well will learn quickly that I'm a big fan of puns, and I try not to do it a lot in like my music and stuff. But every once in a while, I'll have an idea that I'll have some sort of theme to it, and it'll be easily punnable, if that's even a word. And so for this one on the track, one thing I wanted to mention, this track was specifically influenced by a video game that I'm a big fan of from the old school library.
Okay, I felt it. I already know what you're gonna say. Go ahead.
Yeah, how about you? How about you guess if you guess the game? It's an old one though. It's a Super Nintendo game.
Okay, sorry, Super Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe I might be wrong, but this was kind of giving me Castlevania vibes.
Oh, okay. Um, this
It was
def
like threatening right off the bat, too.
this definitely could pass for a Castlevania track. Um,
Yeah.
the inspiration that it came from when I was writing this is Ghouls and Ghosts,
Oh,
an
100%.
old
I
Capcom
definitely
game.
see it now.
There's a couple levels you go through that really prominently feature like some string melodies that play back and forth in a similar rhythm. I think one
Mhm.
of them you're like going through the inside of some sort of like infernal creature. I think that's the thing specifically that inspired me for this one. But the pun in the title, just in case people haven't figured out what I'm talking about, this is like the theme of like a mausoleum or crypt catacombs, and that's where the title comes from. The double meaning being cryptic is something that's vague or uncertain or confusing, but the theme itself would be like going into like an ancient or abandoned crypt. And story wise, you see the rune. The only animation in this one is that you can see the rune flickering on and off on the door. And I like to think the person who's been cursed, as we talked about this a bit in the concept development bits, the person who's been cursed is going on a bit of a journey to probably figure out how to stop the curse. Their first stop would have been traveling through the marsh to actually reach this destination. And the representation of the quote unquote marsh tomb you saw in the previous image, it's almost kind of more like a map now that I think about it. But it's meant to be a
Oh,
simplified
yeah.
representation, and this is where they're actually heading, like close up. This ancient mausoleum or crypt that is hopefully going to house something that'll help them. And so,
The art for it is really good.
oh, thanks. When I was doing research for it, the first thing I looked up was what does a crypt look like? The inside of a crypt is basically catacombs. It's like Dark Souls catacombs areas where you store the dead.
Hmm.
And so I thought, okay, that would be good if I was doing like an internal render of the area, which I was not going to do. So instead, I said I'm going to focus on the entrance. This is it's going to look like some sort of. It looks like a temple or a shrine, which is something iconic hit on too.
Hmm.
But the entrance to this place has kind of an elaborate, like stone worked, evil looking altar kind of design to it. So I just kind of played around with like sharp flat angles and then the texturing and then like spiky bits to show that it's something evil or otherworldly. It doesn't necessarily have to be evil, but definitely not like your good old Jesus tomb.
Not your good old Jesus tomb.
Let me put that on a shirt. But the track itself, going back to the music for a bit, in addition to being inspired by ghouls and ghosts, this one is like you said, it's threatening, but it's kind of like patiently threatening, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
It's slow.
it's yeah, it's slow. Kind of like you're moving slowly through the crypt, and you're like your anxiety is kind of just like there.
Yeah, and the idea that it starts with kind of like the string melody and then the beat sort of comes in and then as it goes different other instruments kind of come in sequence as it goes and then they all kind of peel away and it restricts back down to the string part. The idea there would be like this person is going in here to find something but they hear things that are also in there with them at different points as they're moving through.
Hmm.
And so like the I think it's a harpsichord and one other piano type instrument The one that comes in like one note and then comes in like two measures later, the next note, and then the next note. It's really drawn out over the whole thing. It's not just the melody all at once. I haven't done that a ton, and this is one of the first tracks I've ever done that has a looped part that's stretched that far out, because the actual piece of hardware doesn't really have a restriction I've never seen where it says you have to loop a certain amount of stuff before it can't loop anymore.
Mm.
Basically, you have like a central track that governs like the beats per minute and the tempo, and every track you record after that, you can loop as much or as little as you want, and it syncs and plays back into that beats per minute.
Mm.
Which is probably harder to conceptualize unless I was actually showing you. But if that's why I set the beat and rhythm as the first track I loop, so everything is syncing to that beat. It's the easiest way to explain it.
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
But yeah, kind of spooky, eerie, and a bit more kind of slow and methodical while still being oppressive was the
Mm.
idea here. Shall we move on?
Yeah.
Okay, gonna be a bit of a tonal shift on this next one, I think, but still in the wheelhouse. Let's take a listen to Macabre Carnival. All right, that was Macabre Carnival. So, a couple of things on the origin of this one. First off, this is one of the few tracks. I think there might be only one other one here that we'll see a little bit later that was actually recorded on stream. This one I remember specifically was recorded on Jam Stream within this last year, maybe a few months ago, and a lot of the ideas we were kind of kicking around sort of came together to create this. And I may be remembering wrong. I'm sure he'll tell me at some point, but I think Lava King is the one who named this one. Usually, when I do tracks on stream for the jam streams, once we finish putting stuff together, I'll open it up to the chat to give me a name. And I want to say it was Lava King. It's been a while since he's been around, but the idea of kind of like a cursed circus or carnival is kind of what evolved from the stuff you hear here. And of note, you'll hear me say this on a lot of other projects as well. This one was so close to becoming a waltz. of all the types of stuff that I've tried to write, and I don't think I ever talked to you about this bits, but I think other people have heard me say this. The one type of music I've struggled with the most of the ones I've attempted is a waltz. I don't know why. I think it's because it's 3/4, and I really struggle with 3/4 time signature rhythms. But I'm gonna do it eventually. I've got a track for a project for next year that I'm happy with after failing like 5 times to write a waltz that I like. It's gonna happen, and I'm gonna point it out once you all can hear it.
Looking forward to it.
But this one, as it fits into the overall progression, this is a bit of kind of like a side like a side entry. The way I kind of we talked about this when we were kind of brainstorming ideas as well. I think the idea of this particular one is that this cult that's causing problems is not solely focused on the individual that we've seen so far. And one of the victims, in plural, of their antics is this like circus or carnival that was cursed by something they did. And so, with my rough approximation of trying to create an image that would convey like a circus tent consumed by some sort of like otherworldly or haunted aura is what you see here, and then the power of the bird rune, which is kind of like the focal point of this cult's power, I guess. You see it flashing on and off to signify that it's connected to that overall malevolent series of entities. But other than that, it's kind of not meant to be closely tied into what we've seen so far, since not every single track does. But it was an interesting one to put together.
Yeah, no, that was. I really like the speed of that track.
It's kind of faster than you would expect when you first listen to it, because the tempo isn't super quick, but the rhythm, it has constant kicks on it,
Yeah,
which makes it sound kind of rapid. And so the to me when I hear it, it sounds kind of like a haunted carousel.
yeah, I can totally see what you mean now.
And because you know like calliope music, or the music that you hear on like the traditional carousels with the horses and all that, it kind of sounds like that, but I didn't use the specific instruments, but some of the string and choir synths kind of evoke that style, which it didn't end up working out that way. That wasn't my intention when I created this thing. I thought this was going to be kind of like I don't know what the original idea was, but by the time we were done with it, and again, I think it was Lava King said it sounds like a evil carnival theme almost. I said, oh yeah, I can hear it. Hence
Yeah,
the name.
it's yeah, 100%.
It's
As
like
Iconic said, I can see myself doing some spooky clownery to this.
spooky clownery.
Spooky clownery.
Yes, maybe in crazy clowns or spooky clowns, but not insane clowns.
Yeah.
I don't
Spooky.
really like the insane clown posse.
I have no specific opinion. I think one of them's a furry though, which is interesting.
Well, yeah, if we could take a slight tangent for a sec, I don't really like their music that much. Like the horrorcore thing's not really an aesthetic that I really find interesting. But
Yeah.
the people behind ICP, like Violent J is the main front guy, the kind of bigger of the two. And what you're talking about is what I've heard on the internet, where like his daughter I think is a big furry, and so he's really supportive of like her hobbies and interests, to the point where like he had his own fursuit made and go to
Yeah,
con with
his
her.
own fursuit.
And
It
so
looks great.
it's weird because for such like controversial personalities, I've heard that the guys can be kind of wholesome, and some of the things they stand for and what they support separate from their music, which is an interesting kind of contrast, I guess.
Yeah. To be totally honest, though, most of the musicians that I've ever met, the kindest ones have always been like punk rock, uh, like metal, stuff like that. Like they're so nice. So nice.
Yeah, it's
I've
kind of
had the best experiences around people who play like intense music. They
yeah.
usually have the best attitudes.
Yeah, in fact, I was just talking to someone recently about a pretty good example in modern like hard rock and metal music, and that's David Draymond. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's the lead singer of Disturbed.
Okay.
Whenever you see that guy talk in interviews or in anything, he sounds like the sweetest, most like laid back, wholesome guy ever. and you hear Disturbed's music, and it's, intense. It deals with a lot of really like really hardcore psychological like issues and whatnot. And it's very clear that it's his outlet, which he said in interviews. But he comes across as a really like well spoken, eloquent, chill guy, and everyone's always said, "Oh yeah, I've met that guy before. He's really nice."
Yeah.
But you listen to Down with the Sickness, you wouldn't exactly think, "Oh, this guy must be like," but it doesn't seem like that type of person. But like you said, a lot of times you can't just project the image of the art onto the artist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah, no, that was a good one.
let us continue on. We're almost halfway. I think we are halfway. Next one. This is Nemesis Effigy.
Almost caught it. You
Almost.
almost caught it.
Almost. That was so close, but you didn't say anything. It's fine.
We didn't see anything.
So that was Nemesis Effigy. This is track 9, so we're officially in the second half. Try and pick up a little bit. Then I said you might have to go.
Yeah.
But this one, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
So this one is probably one of the most aggressive that we've seen so far. Based on its intro and the overall tempo and the kind of composition, Iconic says, got this boss fight energy. This one definitely seems like this is some sort of high stakes event or something that's happening. And so for the art to kind of go along with the song, as the title suggests, this is some sort of representation of something that someone has put upon this altar. And at this point, we don't know who or what, but we see the rune, and I realize I probably should have scaled this a little bit better. The bird rune is there. It's in the little circle where the heart would be, and
Oh,
it's hard to see. You can see it on the frame I've paused here. It's just very dark, and it's there, and then it blips on and off. So sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. I should have made that part a little bit bigger or brighter, give it like a glow effect so you could see it. So that's fine, but it is there. That's the only animation bit on this one. But the design for the actual effigy, which is it's not a person per se, it's supposed to be a representative item that is conferring like a person's image or whatnot. And so I wanted to create something that looked like kind of like a doll. This is meant to be kind of large scale. Something we talked about as far as what scale it would be. And I know your concept work had kind of like a voodoo doll kind of
mm-hmm.
aesthetic. So I kind of took that idea and made it a little bit bigger. So this is like a person size altar with this representation kind of here and
Yeah.
staked to it. The idea being that the group is going to light this thing on fire. Usually if you have a ritual and you burn something in effigy, as they say, with the intent of a lot of times causing harm, or it's some sort of spell or incantation meant to inflict something on someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And so for this one, kind of like I hinted music wise earlier on, this one's more rock ish in its style compared to a good portion of the playlist. And it was fun kind of messing around with the tempo again, constant kicks to give you kind of more of a rapid, but not super rapid, like a galloping pace, just a bit more of a like a churn and kind of like a chugging rhythm to it.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds again it's supposed to sound brooding and aggressive, like stuff's gonna happen. Those wacky cultists.
I wish I could explain exactly what I enjoyed about it, but I don't know what like instrument you used for it, but there's like a part in the background where it kind of raises up for a moment, and I really liked that because it's like a little bit different from the vibe you're getting from the initial background, and it's kind of like as if an action is occurring or something like that. It's it's really good. It like brings along the song.
Are you talking about the part that goes dun 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 dun?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's exact. I was like, do I sing? I don't.
that's a synth. I don't remember what
That
combination
synth?
of
Okay.
it's a synth, but I don't remember what combination it is. It has like a rapid slicer and like an echo delay on it, so that it's kind of
Hmm.
like pinging. It sounds like something kind of metallic it's like chiming and pinging, but
Yeah.
it comes and goes. It doesn't loop constantly. So the way I
Hmm.
recorded it was I recorded it and then I left blank space in the loop at the end, so that when it repeats, it comes back in, but then it has dead air before it loops again.
Hmm.
And so it's got like a 2 measure, I think, blank space of time, which is why you hear it sporadically instead of just doing that same sequence over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of like, it kind of seems like something's happening each time that it comes up.
Iconic says, always hard to compliment Bud's work, but not knowing the right words. That's
Yeah, I'm
okay.
like, I do enjoy this. I just don't know how to put words to it because I don't have like musical knowledge.
No,
So,
that's fine. And you could have sung it and I would have got it. Because
yeah.
there isn't a whole lot in there that's that sporadic. But
Hmm.
I'm glad that comes across because it's kind of a cool effect I haven't really done a lot of. Another thing of note, which it might be tough to hear unless you listen really closely, the string part in the background that
Hmm.
kind of comes in towards the middle later part and then cuts out and then it comes back at the end and kind of gets louder before the whole thing cuts off. That's one note. It's one sustained note through the whole thing. And that's something else that I didn't do on anything else besides this track, I think. Everything else has like one or two note progressions, or it'll go like 1 1 2 1 2 1 2, or like 1 2 1 2 1 2, like we saw in a couple.
Hmm.
This one, it's one note, and whenever you hear that string synth, it's playing one flat note the entire time, which it turned out decently well. If depending on what other melodies are around, it can be really dissonant, which is when like a melody clashes with another, it sounds really off. But if you don't get like really weird with keys and everything else, then having like a single line will kind of bounce off of everything going around it, which is kind of cool.
No, I think it worked well. Good.
Yeah, that was a
Y-
fun one to write.
Yeah. I do like the ones that are a little bit more intense, kind of feels like a battle.
Oh, we got a couple of those coming up. But we're gonna switch the mood a little bit. This next one is Manic Mandragora, and you've heard at least half of this one before, I think.
Hmm.
So let's take a look. Ha! Actually got it before it completely faded out that time. So that one was Manic Mandragora. Bit of a tonal shift, like I mentioned. I wanted to include this one just because it's a bit different from the others, but I think it could still fit in the overall progression. The kind of vibe from this one, especially compared to the last one, which is again kind of more oppressive and intense. This one's a bit more mischievous, and it's got kind of like Iconic said, a bit more of kind of like a funky swingish kind of tempo, which I haven't done a lot of. But it's
Hmm.
also got a lot of elements that are going to be still kind of brooding and mysterious.
You kind of got like the mischief where it goes do 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 do, like kind of in the middle there,
Yep.
and it fades in and out. I really like that part. That like you, it feels mischievous, like they're sneaking around doing something like they shouldn't be. It's I like it. I
Yeah,
like it.
and this is what we talked about when we were on our concept development call, and I played this track for you. I said when I wrote this one initially, the idea was that it'd be kind of like a subtle but kind of mischievous tone. But when I put the note progression in where you hear it in the song and it kicks in, it sounds like someone falling down the stairs.
Forgot that you said that.
And
Yeah.
I remember I played it for you, and I said, I'm not gonna tell you which part it is. Just listen to this snippet I play for you and see if you can pinpoint what I'm talking about. And I know you said you could kind of hear it in that tone because it's going at a steady pace and the rhythm never changes. But then that
It
it's a
comes in.
harpsichord riff comes in,
Okay.
and so
Yeah.
to your point about like maybe this creature itself is kind of like sneaking around a lab and getting into trouble, and it's trying to be really stealthy and sneak around, and then it falls down the stairs, and it's like one of those big like coiling 50,000 step staircase, which is why you keep hearing that over and over again. And I can
They
just
like
picture
catch themselves and then just fall again.
this little like plant creature tumbling like head over butt down like this winding stone staircase all the way down, and then by the time they hit the bottom, then that's when the whole that little harpsichord riff stops, and they
Yeah.
climb back up, and then when the song repeats, they slip and fall back down again, and all the way down.
Yeah.
It's kind of a fun song, and that wasn't really my intent initially, but when I listened to it and kind of played it back, I thought that's got a fun idea to it. I want to include this one just because it's a little bit different than the others. It's more kind of light and whimsical.
Mhm.
And as far as the design, I remember seeing your concept art for this one as well, the concept sketches that you were doing, and
Mhm.
so I kind of took that idea, and the image here that we see is supposed to be like the creature in like a glass sphere or a jar,
Okay.
and which is what the kind of gray part you see to the left is it kind of encapsulates the whole thing.
Mhm.
And it might not be easy to tell, but the whole shape from like the top of the head all the way down to the foot that connects to that kind of gray silver part, it's one uninterrupted circular shape. So I started with a
Mhm.
circle and I basically not carved, but I created all the details while still preserving that border of a circular shape. And so to me, it looks like a creature kind of curled up in
Mhm.
something, and then maybe when we're hearing the track, it gets out and is like walking around, and that's where all the trouble starts. And then I threw the bird rune in here just for kind of continuity. Like maybe this is within the labs or the arcane workshops of the cult that we first saw,
Mhm.
and this is one thing that's part of their process or whatever, and maybe this is going on while they're out doing the rest of their culty stuff.
Lava King is here.
Hey, Lava King, welcome to the stream. Lava King says xenomorph. Uh,
It's closer to like so it's a mandragora, but like everybody's seen like Harry Potter, the mandra. What the heck are they called? They're close. Similar name. Mandrakes.
yeah, yeah, that's what we see in lore, and Lava King's asking who the heck was that. That's Bits. Bits is my co-host on this stream because they helped come up with the art and concept design for this album. So
Hi,
say hi to
Lava
Bits.
King.
We did go through a previous track that I believe it was you, Lava King, named. It was Macabre Carnival. You can listen to the VOD when this goes in the archives and hear us talk about that. But I'm pretty sure you're the one who named that on stream. So correct me if I'm wrong on that one. The one that sounds like a cursed circus. But anyway, you're right, Bits, as far as like the design from like the Mandragora and Mandrakes of lore. They're these kind of vaguely humanoid shaped plants that have like a kind of like leafy top, and sometimes they have faces, sometimes they don't, but a lot of times one of the things they're known for is the ability to like scream really loudly and kill everything around them with their cries.
Mm.
And sometimes people draw them weirdly like curvy and voluptuous, which is a whole other discussion of questionable theories,
I
I
didn't do
think.
that, I promise.
I
I
thought it'd be
think
really
of
funny to do that, but it turned out to not be real something I could easily confer to this type of drawing format.
yeah. Like you're obviously not going to show it later, but the concept art that I did for this one is definitely a lot more serious than kind of what the song gives off. So I kind of like the way that you did it.
Yeah, I kicked around a bunch of different ideas for for this one. It was kind of an experimental process, but it ended up being fine, and the animation also has the glowing parts and the bits on the head. I guess it'd be kind of like not fruit, but little highlights or whatever.
Mhm.
And it's pretty simple.
I really like it though. It's
Oh,
really
okay, I
good
see
art.
it. I guess Lava King didn't see your avatar. Don't forget, Lava
And we,
King. Bits uses him, they pronouns. Don't forget. But they're
but
here.
I
It,
like the kind of antennae, if
yeah, the
you
little
call it that, that
like
you added
sprouty
to it.
bits.
Yeah,
They're supposed
I
to be like
really do.
like plant stalks.
It
Like you'd
kind of
see on like
adds
a
to the vibe that you had going on earlier with Myrtle Coils, where you had like the otherworldly kind of snake going on. So it kind of matches that theme where it's not quite what you would expect.
I thought about making him a different color, honestly, but I thought it might be a little distracting. And like Lava King saying, the little purple bits could be berries, like in
Could
SMT.
be.
Uh, let's go with that as opposed to anything else that I was thinking of. Makes more sense. I don't know what mandragora berries would taste like, but
Probably very poisonous.
they explode.
They
They're
explode.
they're 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 plant-based explosives.
Just like throw them at the ground. It's like a tiny explosion.
Yeah, like those little pop things that people get in
Yeah.
the packages and toss on the ground.
Yeah. This
Well,
is not my artwork. This is, in fact, Raku's.
oh
You will be
yeah,
seeing my artwork at the end of the VOD.
yeah. Okay, sorry. I should have probably gone through the explanation of what we're doing here since Lava King jumped on.
Yeah.
So Bits helped me brainstorm a lot of the conceptual art for each of the tracks that we're gonna see, and all of the stuff you see in this format with this flat 2D style was drawn by me. And Bits has done several scenes from the entire album that we're gonna see at the end, and we'll definitely talk about that and what went into that. But um, the ideas that we came up with, we had kind of like a long call where we talked about all the tracks and some ideas. So that's where the stuff comes from, and I tried to kind of adapt that into this type of style for the video itself. So hopefully that came across well. I tried.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. We are moving on to this is I think track number 10. No, 11. Okay. Horrify. Let's have a listen. That was Horrify. Once again, more puns. I can explain this one since it's probably not that apparent just based on the title itself. So, on the loop station itself, this is kind of a technical explanation, but there's an effect that I like to use on a lot of tracks that require distortion. And everyone's heard like lo-fi hip hop, right?
Hmm.
Like everyone knows what that sounds like. It's basically kind of lower audio fidelity, intentionally meant to kind of sound kind of more like scratchy and sometimes distorted on purpose. There's a preset that adds like a layer of fuzz and distortion over things on the loop. And I've used it on some tracks. I used it on Marsh Tomb actually, but I changed the parameters a bit here. And so the bass line, which is the first thing you hear, that really oppressive, slow sequence of the bass line, it has that horrify effect on it. And when I was thinking about it, it invokes kind of like a slow, ominous presence. And so it's just horrify, like horror lo-fi. That's where it comes from. It is it sounded like a really clever idea at the time.
Honestly, I it comes across to me with like the dash in front of the phi. I get it.
Good, because otherwise people are gonna think it says horrify, and that's not what it's supposed to say.
Horrible Wi-Fi. Got it.
Yeah, yeah. I did see Lava King
No.
ask, did you use Macabre Carnival? Yeah, that's what I was alluding to when you jumped on Lava King. It's further up in the stream. It's track number 8 of the overall album. And so, like I said, if you check out the VOD when I post it later of us talking about it, we were specifically talking about how you named it. And I thought I remembered correctly. So if you're asking, I'm assuming I'm correct and that you did name Macabre Carnival. But yes, we use the name, and it's the track that you saw when we were doing it on stream. It's the same track and the name that you gave. So you can tell your friends that you named a track that's part of a quote unquote official music release.
Show them it on Spotify.
Yeah, and make sure they stream it on Spotify or
Oh,
Tidal.
or title.
The track ended up pretty cool though. So yeah, definitely check out the VOD archive and you can hear what we're talking about. And so for this one, again, like we're talking about, it's got a really kind of slow and ominous vibe to it. And kind
Hmm.
of like the Carnival one, this one's a bit of a kind of non sequitur compared to some of the other ones that are more of a loose connected story. But to me, it wouldn't be too big of a jump to suggest that the Mandragora that we saw in the previous one is connected to some sort of ritual that's binding this spirit. Because when
Hmm.
I put the track together, I said it sounds like something is being like trapped or restrained or sealed. And because I
Yeah.
couldn't think of anything else to tie to a title like Horrify, uh, I drew up this kind of somewhat stereotypical ghost-like entity being shackled or chained onto this object and being sealed. That's where you see the bird rune, the red bird rune that flashes on and off along with the
Hmm.
shackles. And so that was the best idea that I could come up with for something that would sort of be thematically appropriate.
We did mean Mandragora.
Oh, I see Lava King's asking Mandragora. Yeah, I'm talking about the last track. I honestly don't know the difference between the two. I've always heard them used sort of interchangeably, and it could be like depending on which type of lore you're drawing from. But as it relates to the story here, the Mandragora from the previous track could have been used as some sort of conduit for the ritual that's binding the spirit. And so that was kind of what I thought for the art. It's not really that deep. I just came up with an idea that seemed to fit. And if you wanted to make it even more appropriate, you can just take this image that we have on screen here, delete out the bird rune in the object that thing's being bound to, and just replace it with the word Mondays.
Yeah. Yeah. Mood.
Put
It
that on a
kind
shirt.
of the art the art kind of looks like your mascot. I'm forgetting its name.
Oh, Tenpo.
Tempo. It kind of looks like if Tempo were a ghost.
Oh yeah, yeah. If it was red, if it was red,
Yeah,
it would basically be ghost tempo. I think it's the
yeah.
head. It's that kind of like
It's
zigzaggy.
definitely the head.
Yeah,
Yeah. I don't know. I just thought that was like an interesting little tidbit.
that was not intentional, but I totally see it now.
Cute.
Ghost
I
tempo.
really like the art for this one as well.
It's simple. It's very very simple. Like I put it together and then I drew it and overlaid the components and started like the loop in Vegas. Because at first I thought it was missing something, but I figured, it doesn't need to be anything that intricate.
Yeah, it has really good like movement to it. You can like tell that they're struggling against the like or restraints that are on them.
Yeah, the
Like
only thing
it's
I would
yeah.
have done differently would have been to stretch out the animations so that the shackles stay longer and they don't kind of blink and flash. Like they're there and they
Mm,
fade out and they come back, but it's not like constantly blinking. That's the only thing I'd change.
yeah.
But considering how much I struggle with dynamic poses in this particular type of drawing style, I don't have to get like super super specific with anatomy. It just needs to be silhouetted essentially. It's like a silhouette shadow, which is really good because I suck at dynamic poses. As anyone who's watched me draw on stream has probably noticed. Give me those standing 3/4 neutral poses, baby. All right, should I move on? We
Yeah,
are
let's
getting close to the end. Next up, this
get
is track number 12, Sacrificial Search. All right. That was Sacrificial Search. Track 12. Well, this one takes some themes from some of the previous ones we've seen so far and brings things back, and we're sort of back to the quote unquote mainline story, as it were, we've seen in the release so far. And for this one, track wise, it's a bit more, seems faster to me, but I think it's because of the like the rapid kicks on the drums again. But it's a bit more rockish. Like we mentioned, there's going to be some rockish type ones coming up.
I really did like the drums on this one though. It really like brought it together.
The drums kind of drive the entire thing because they only, I think, cut out a couple times throughout the whole thing. Otherwise, they're pretty much like the backbone of the entire track.
Hmm.
Another thing of note on the music side before we talk about the art, this is one of the few tracks that has like a very distinct part A and part B. And so in the beginning, you hear kind of like this. It's like it's a harpsichord mixed with something else run through a slicer, and the synth melody goes up, and then it has a couple parts, and then it repeats again. And then at some point in the song, there's a transition, and then that part just goes away and doesn't come back. And then a different synth that sounds kind of like it's like a really high piano and like a chime almost comes in, and it's a descending melody that goes like in the opposite direction. And then that plays for the remainder of the song till it goes away. Kind of a unique thing then that I haven't done on a ton of tracks here, where it's like a part A and part B. A lot of times it's aspects of part A and part B sprinkled together.
Hmm.
It's also one of the first, I think, only tracks that has bells. I don't use a lot of bells. You can
I
hear
really
them.
liked it.
You can hear them going off in different places. But as far as the art goes, so we are back to the group that is kind of our first entity, as it were. Only we actually get to see what they look like now. And so the
It's
idea here,
terrifying.
hmm,
Which is high key terrifying. Was not expecting tentacles.
Cthulhuoids. I'm still workshopping the name, but some sort of cult or like coven of these creatures are what we now know is responsible for the things up till now in the story. And what's supposed to be taking place here, and I hope this comes across somewhat, the altar that you see here is the same one from Nemesis Effigy.
Yeah, it's the same sacrificial spot where that doll you were talking about is, right? Or
Yes.
was, right?
Yep. And I don't know if it's really that clear. You'd have to look at that song scene and this one back to back. But what I think I did when I rendered this image is I took the color of the altar from the previous one and I made it darker. So
Mm.
the significance is they burn the effigy as part of their ritual as a way to prepare the altar for their
Oh.
actual sacrifice. And the sacrificial search is them getting ready to go get the actual
Oh,
thing that's going to
okay.
be on the altar now that they've prepared it.
That makes sense.
And so when I was coming up with the ideas, I thought that would be a good through line to connect them to like who or what is doing the search and why.
Mm.
Lava King says just call them Lovecrafts. That's an interesting
I,
idea. It sounds like a
yeah?
good product name for like Cthulhu inspired adult toys.
Uh, mm,
If that doesn't exist
adult
already.
toys. Yeah,
Yeah, like you know, cars or airplanes or other things that people play with.
that, that's what we meant. Yeah.
But when I was drawing these, what I did just to kind of save myself some time, 'cause I was working on these things leading up to the release. I had one of these hooded figures drawn, and then I put the tentacles, and then I copied that entire image, and then I just slowly changed the shape or like the hems of the robes. So none of these are identical. They're all different, even though they look very similar.
Mhm.
And then I redrew the tentacles for every single one. So again, they look similar, but every single one of them has unique tentacle patterns, which is something I'm sure no one's going to notice unless they look really closely, but I did it anyway.
I like it. It kind of makes me want to crawl out of my skin, but that's also probably what you were going for.
It is a Halloween album.
Yeah. It is in fact Halloween album. Oh my gosh. But even the song kind of just it you got this like continued theme of like anxiety and like
Unease and
uneasiness. Yeah. And you can definitely feel that in this track, especially with the kicks. Like, yeah,
what I
100%.
imagine if this was animated, it would be them like walking in a circle
Ugh.
around the altar, like just shuffling like in sequence or maybe out of sequence in like a pattern around the altar and then maybe walking off camera in a line.
Mm.
But I couldn't do that because I'm not an animator. And the only thing that animates here is the bird rune above the altar going on and off, signifying that this is the same group.
Yeah.
Because I thought, like, what would be a good way to represent whatever these things are that are part of this ritual? I thought about making them birds, but I thought that's not nearly creepy enough.
Not creepy enough. No.
They could have been like tentacle birds, but I ended up with like Cthulhu, Lovecraftian, like Lava King said, inspired, like Illithid, Mind Flayer type things.
Yeah. My brain definitely went straight towards Mind Flayers, but I've been playing way too much Baldur's Gate 3, so.
Are those in Baldur's Gate 3?
Yeah, it's like one of the main plot points is that you were taken by Mind Flayers and they put a lithid tadpole in your brain.
Oh, I've always
Yeah,
thought
that's
those
like
were
the
cool.
first thing.
Those are
Yeah.
cool monsters of like fantasy lore. Their design is just wicked.
They're so cool. I kind of want a tattoo of like a mind flayer now. Not gonna lie. But back to the music.
Indeed. Let us move on to track number 13. This is Death Door Ceremony. All right. That was Death Door Ceremony. I think Lava King is onto something in talking about how it's got that kind of Dark Harbor, Ghost Town vibe.
Oh, 100%.
I've never played FF8 or 7, so I wouldn't know of anything from there. I swear, up and down.
I'm sorry?
I've played.
Neither?
No, I've played. My favorite is 6. I've played
Your
4.
favorite is six.
I've played half of 4. 6 is my favorite. I've played 4/5 of 10 and half of 15.
Okay.
I wouldn't consider myself a diehard Final Fantasy person.
No, I'm completely lost on your opinions on Final Fantasy, but I guess it makes sense if you've only played those games.
Well, I have Remake, but I bought it as part of the collector's edition for PS4, and I never play anything on my PS4. And so eventually, when I play Remake, it's gonna probably just be on PC when the
Like
whole thing
Final
is done.
Fantasy VII Remake or
Yeah,
which one?
yeah, 7
Yeah, okay.
Remake.
Yeah,
Um,
no, you should absolutely do that. Like 7, this is a very common opinion, but 7 is like my favorite. But
oh, I know. Believe me, Bits. Everybody on the internet has told me for years.
to play 7,
Yeah, it's not
yeah.
because I don't want to. It's just I didn't at the time, and I haven't really had the means to play it since. But I do want to play the remake of 7 because it's more contemporary.
Yeah. I
But
also have the collector's edition of the like Final Fantasy VII movie, Advent Children.
oh yeah, I've seen that.
It's a good movie. I'll give it that. It's very interesting.
Lava King says seriously 6, dude. You gotta try tactics. There is nothing controversial about people liking 6. 6 is considered to be one of the most popular
No,
ones.
6 is good. Like I'm just yeah.
I don't consider tactics part of the main line of Final Fantasy games, though. That is one I want
No.
to play, though, because I do like
That's
tactics
like
games.
saying that's like saying like Kingdom Hearts is like mainline. No, that doesn't make sense. No.
Yeah, but it's good. I do know tactics is very good. I just, again, haven't had a means to play it. If it was in a collection, I probably would. But yeah, I don't know. Because
Back to the music.
the only real justification I can give is my console progression went from Nintendo to Super Nintendo to PS2.
Okay.
So I missed everything. Like, because I never had a 64, so I missed the majority of 64 aside from like Smash and GoldenEye, and I missed like everything in PS1 pretty much. Some of the stuff
I think
I went to play
I
after the
had like
fact.
every console up until 360 and then like every single thing that you could get that were like main consoles, so like any Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox. I had them all
Oh
because
well,
I
yeah,
had two brothers.
after Super Nintendo, I had to buy my own consoles, and so it wasn't until much later in Earth School when I was able to buy a PS2. And so like I missed GameCube, I missed Dreamcast,
Dude,
I
you
missed
you
the
missed
original
so much with
Xbox.
GameCube, man.
Oh, I know. Well, I played a
Yeah.
lot of games that were on GameCube and PS2, but even
Oh.
the first
He's
titles.
pulling his cock out.
Oh my god, Ramen, you forgot to turn that off.
I'm so sorry. Hello.
That is quite the entrance, my friend. Um,
All
hello, say
right.
hello to the stream, Ramen, with
Yes,
that
yes.
intro.
I'm pulling stream up right now. Give me a second so I can say hello to chat.
Do appreciate the
Um
moist critical. I didn't have to be
Yes, sir.
that particular voice clip, but
yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
it's fine. We were just talking about how I haven't played enough video games.
Yeah.
It's fine.
You should totally play like Baldur's Gate, you know?
I want to. It's on my list.
There you go.
I think.
What do we got to do to get you playing it?
Who, me?
Yeah.
I've got to get to it on my list.
Okay, well,
How long's your list?
how long is your list?
You don't want to know the answer to that, but it's high up on my list of things I want to play, as opposed to
I,
low on my list of things I want to play.
okay.
I think for me personally, because it wouldn't have been a game I would have got into normally, but over the last couple of years, I've been playing a lot of D&D with some friends of mine online.
Mhm.
And so I definitely think I would appreciate it a lot more knowing like a lot of the ins and outs of like D&D and those types of mechanics.
Baldur's Gate is a really good starter for it. I'll be honest.
So I hear.
Please
I've
join
seen
us.
such hilarious clips of things that happen in that game.
Mhm.
Join us. Anyway,
Anyway,
let's get back to the song.
Back to the
I
music.
would-
Music.
My quick thing I'm gonna say about this. It feels like at the beginning of the song they're like opening a door, and then when it hits the second part of the song where those like kind of vocal synths come in, it feels like the door is open and there's something terrifying about to come through. Like that's kind of the vibe that I got from that.
So you're actually onto something there, Bits. This
Okay.
particular song is meant to be a lead into the next one. And so the idea here, taking the previous one, which was Sacrificial Search, the idea that this group was looking for a target for a ritual of sacrifice. In this track, they've found their target, and we're looking at it through the target's eyes, in that the target is being sacrificed on that kind of altar thing before this object we see here, which is actually like an altar.
Okay.
And so this is the thing that they're being sacrificed in front of, and the next scene, as you will, is what the group was doing the sacrifice for.
Blood for the blood god.
Pretty
Blood
much.
for the blood god.
And so the song itself sounds kind of ceremonial and ritualistic. It's got a lot of organ, which I wanted to kind of mix in to give that kind of like ceremonial, kind of religious type of vibe, but it's kind of got like a dark and oppressive sort of feel to it, like Bit said, especially when the choir synths come in, it sounds like more chanting.
Mhm.
You know, like
Yeah.
reciting incantations or whatever as part of this ritual. And in the image, you see this kind of intricate altar, and the bird rune is what you see first. And then it switches to this.
It's like skull that kind of looks otherworldly.
Yeah, you can't see it because you have to zoom in pretty close, and there's a bit of a glow filter over it. But it's a skull that has multiple irises within each eye.
Yeah.
Which-
Yeah, you can kind of tell from this, from like looking at your stream, you can kind of tell, but yeah,
Yeah, so-
absolutely.
Some sort of entity that may or may not have control over the concept of death is kind of the target, hence the term, or the title, Death Door Ceremony. And this whole thing is meant to kind of lead up to that.
It looks
and-
like it was made out of a corpse.
Drawing the altar itself was kind of an interesting experiment. I just put ideas together. It wasn't really any sort of high concept. But
Mhm.
one thing I wanted to kind of communicate was like bone. The idea
Yeah,
that it's constructed out
absolutely.
of bones.
Yeah, that's why I was saying it looks like it's made out of a corpse. Like that it's bone. Yeah.
Never mind that they're not white. They've been dyed. They're blue bones. It's fine.
I got it. We're good.
Idea came across. Check the box.
Check the box.
Okay. Ramen, I know you're just jumping in, but did you hear this track before you jumped on?
No, I didn't actually, so
Okay.
I'm kind of lost.
That's all right. The VOD for the stream will be on my channel after
Yeah,
we're done.
absolutely. I can't wait to hear my entrance.
And then the unedited, or like just the compilation video, will be live first. So if you want to actually hear the tracks without us talking over them, that'll be live as soon as we get done. But I'll have to render the VOD out, and then that'll be up too. It was audible. I'm sure everybody heard Charlie go off about something about a rooster, I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know.
But we can go ahead and move on to track 14. This one is called Animus Carrion, and I think is my favorite song in the entire album.
Ooh, okay.
Let's give it a listen. That was track number 14, Animus Carrion. Some things of note on this one. This is, I think, the only track on the entire album that is like vaguely hip hop in its kind of tempo and styling, which ended up being kind of an unexpected result since I didn't think anything on the entire album was going to be remotely like hip hop adjacent when it comes to like the beat and tone.
Mm-hmm.
Which ended up being funny because it turns out this is actually a really good rap beat to use, and I may or may not be using it on some future projects.
It's
Nice.
really good.
But
Yeah,
good.
I want to repeat the comment I said earlier. This feels like a rival crew just showed up from Jet Set Radio. Like you're about to go toe to toe, like a crew battle. Doing some picks and shit.
Yeah, it feels like a confrontation.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm.
because and this one probably has the most complex things going on the track itself. That's just a matter of turning on the loop station's effects. So like
Mhm.
when it starts, everything is kind of muffled, which is being run through a filter.
Right.
And that repeats for a few bars, and then the beat comes in for real, and you actually hear that kind of shambling, kind of shuffling beat that goes for the whole thing. To me, in the beginning, the reason why it's animated this way, and I'll explain that in a sec, because that muffled part in the beginning is kind of subtle and subdued, and you don't really know where the track's gonna go. Like to Ramen's point about it sounding like people are like forming up to battle or
Mm.
square off. It's the lead in, and then once the beat comes in, things are starting to pop off, and then as it goes, little things come in on the track that start building, and then it backs off for a bit. Everything mutes, like the drums mute only, and everything else keeps going, and then it just kind of builds, and you get like the choir synth come in later. And so this one's probably the most like again complicated of the tracks, in that a lot of stuff happens throughout the whole thing, and it doesn't just kind of repeat and then subtly change. And I overall just think it's a kind of a fun energy to it, which is different from a lot of the other tracks on here, but still kind of on theme.
No, that one has really good energy.
I
I
do.
do
I
like
also,
no
yeah,
go ahead, Bits.
I also really like the way that you did the drums where it like goes out. Just the whatever sound filter you're putting over it as it like leaves,
Mm-hmm.
just so nice, such a nice sound. I don't know how to explain it, but it just like it's so good.
It's
It
I
makes the
can't
ear
remember if it's
feel
a
good.
low mid or high. I think it's a low pass filter. And on the
Yeah.
loop station itself, there's a lot you can tweak with what it does. And I think this is
Mm.
default basic parameters. And it basically just it muffles everything. And the way the effects work on loop stations, you have a knob for intensity from like a 0 to 100 on a knob.
Hmm.
And the more towards 0 you have, the more muted and like drowned out everything is. And then when you turn it more towards 100 to the right, it starts pulling the effect back and letting more of what it's muffling come through.
Hmm.
And so this one, it's just kind of think on and off. But if you want to do like a gradual filter transition, which I do on like a lot of the stuff I write, you just are twisting the knob like up or down to get that mute. So it's very simple, but it's very powerful and it's really useful.
No, it works great.
As far as the art itself, so real quickly, I didn't notice this till just now, but homeboy here in the upper left, you can see my cursor on the stream or at least on the Twitch broadcast.
Yeah.
He's unintentionally doing the "is this blank" meme. The guy with the glasses.
That's
Yeah. Yeah. I can see it now.
Didn't
funny.
did not intend to do that, but I'll
He's
accept it.
vibing.
It's fine.
He's vibing.
We love Easter eggs.
They're all just vibing.
I should take that guy, put him on a shirt, and say like, "Is this
Is this music?
yeah? Is this music?"
Is this a cult? And then it's
Is this
the
a cult?
bird.
Yeah, it should be the rune, pointing at the rune. Is this heresy? So real quickly, another thing on the art that I have to mention. Again, I don't think Wazi is still here, but if she was, she would absolutely murder me. So the way I animated, quote unquote, animated this is I rendered each frame, adding in the little guys here, and then once they're all in the picture and it completely goes black for like 1 second and then comes back and they're all dancing, that's a GIF.
Yeah.
That's an animated GIF
Nice.
where I just took like 4 frames and animated them and compiled it into a GIF, and it's just looping on the video track until the end.
Nice.
But I liked it. I really did like it. You can definitely tell what you're trying to convey there.
The most low-tech
just-
solutions to a high-tech problem.
Honestly, it works with the art style though, because if you overcomplicated it with this kind of art style, it wouldn't match.
Lava King says, "You mean Joff?" I'm gonna say GIF till
No.
I die.
GIF.
GIF.
Don't
That's
you dare.
peanut butter.
I say GIF. I'm messing with you guys.
Swear to God.
Apparently, the Old English pronunciation is actually YIF. So do with that
Mm.
information what you
Not.
will.
Do not.
I don't think I will.
Good
I
job,
refuse.
England. So what's the like story significance behind this? It's kind of fun and it's interesting seeing all these little dudes jump around. But the idea, story-wise, is that the ritual being performed in the previous scene is to give the cult the ability to animate the dead. Now, are these dead people? We don't know. They're not really meant to be people. They have multiple eyes. That's not like eyes in a mouth. That's just eyes. And they all have weird gangly proportions. So I wouldn't really say assume they're people. Maybe they're whatever the species of the cult are. The kind of Cthulhu Mind Flayer-esque things that we don't really see. We don't know. Lava King says, furries are just humans that can be hunted for sport. That's not nice.
My reaction, I'm literally a furry. Say that again?
I've met some cool furries.
I would say I'm a cool furry.
Yeah, like Bits.
I was gonna say one's in the voice chat right now.
You're the only
Yeah.
you're the only one I know personally. I've met some other ones online.
You're the only cool furry. You're
No,
the
that
only
Only personally.
in person. I've met a lot of people on the internet, Ramen, but Bits is the only one I've met like in person.
Lava King says, but Bits, you can't be a furry. You're cool and nice. What? That implies that like all other furries you know are not cool and mean. Are you okay?
Yeah, did furries hurt you, Lava King?
It's like, did you get ratioed by furries on Twitter.com? Like, what do we do? Do you need help, buddy?
Hey, whether or not you agree with the lifestyle, you have to acknowledge that furries help run the economy. All right?
I'm terrified.
They do.
Furries.
There's so many suspiciously rich furries that I know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, quite literally, if you fuck with them, they can easily just order a pipe bomb to your house.
Lava King says, I've had a bad experience at a convention one time. Well, that doesn't mean it's all furries. That's all we're saying.
They
and I
don't
see Rira's here. What's up, Rira? Welcome to the stream.
Hi, Rira.
This is not like a furry discussion stream. It's just what we're talking about.
I apologize. Now. We got pulled off to the
we got extremely sidetracked. It's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
That's just my energy, you know.
Yeah.
Chaos. But for any before we move on, I think I've kind of said my piece on this one. It's not meant to be super complex, but it's kind of more of a fun, interesting energy track. For you two, any other thoughts before we move on?
I do really like it. It's definitely like the kind of tempo that I really like.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Do these songs loop by any chance?
Yeah.
Do they loop?
So like let's say for instance you upload it on Spotify, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you do the loop the singular song, right? Will it actually sync up to the beginning of the song, kind of like a background song, or like for example Super Smash Brothers?
Yeah.
You know, whenever you're doing a fight, the song loops.
Yeah, it's like in a video game, game theme that's meant to go. They're designed to be played like that, and because it's the song and there's one repeat, so it plays it twice, and the repeat is supposed to be as seamless as possible. I'm decent at it now, but as far as where it ends, I haven't tested that on a lot of my tracks because whenever I'm using them on my stream, it's running through a playlist and it's not looping just one.
Right.
But if you like, you have Spotify, so you could test it and then let me know how cleanly it does that, and if you need like a version that's designed to do that for like content or something.
Or if the viewers want to know, where do they go, Raku?
Oh well, if you want to,
Where do we get the music?
if you're interested in checking out my music, and I'll mention this at the end too, but uh, if you're interested in checking out my music, you can find it on streaming platforms like Spotify and Tidal. Those two specifically. I'm not on Apple or Amazon because
Not yet.
their price policies are really annoying, and
Oh, really?
you can't make stuff free.
That's sad.
Like I have to put a price tag on my tracks, regardless of if I'm even uploading there, which also pissed me off. But just like Bits is saying in chat, in addition to streaming platforms, if you want to download the tracks to use for like video content, like YouTube or whatnot, you can download the tracks for free on Bandcamp and choose your audio format that you want. Just put $0 in the little box that asks how much you want to pay, and you can download them for free. Oh, and Bits has linked my Bandcamp. Thank you for doing that, Bits.
Let's go. And Spotify.
I don't use Tidal, but someone specifically requested that, so I put my stuff on there too. Oh, I did see further up before we move on. Lava King says, I remember what I wanted to say, which was I came up with the name for the cult. Oh, yeah, put it in the chat. I hope it has something to do with birds. That's the through line for the cult so far.
Burp.
Birds.
And
Burp.
Iconic's also giving a shout out to Bits. And since Ramen's here, you should shout him out too, Iconic. It's all good. All right, let's move on. We've got two tracks
I just
left.
realized I don't have a PNG tuber. It's hilarious.
It's
That's all
because he
good.
doesn't have the group up. He just
That's all good.
yeah.
Let's
Oh
continue.
yeah,
What's
that's
up?
right. You should send me your Discord reactive at some point, Ramen. It's too kind
Yeah,
of too
at
late
some
now,
point. It's all good. I kind of joined in late, anyways. I just got home.
we can hear you but not see you. Just a disembodied voice of chaos.
I'm the
Disembodied
DM.
bowl of noodles. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm the DM. Let's go.
Okay, let's go reaching into the abyss.
Track number 15.
All right, let's see here.
I almost got it.
You almost had
I
it.
almost had it. You saw nothing.
Yeah.
The last graphic's a little bit difficult to make out anyway, so we're fine. It's fine. So that
Did we
was
hydrate people?
yes, I saw that from Iconic. Thank you.
Yeah, I know I did. I was just muted. So this reminded me heavily of Darkest Dungeon for those who have played that game,
I have not,
where
but that's also on my list to
it's
play.
Ooh, yeah.
yeah, that was like the immediate vibe. It's like venturing into like the dark abyss, I guess. Reaching into the abyss for the title. But yeah, just venturing into that dark abyss of like the amounts of unknown you'll encounter, like the shit that you cannot predict whatsoever, like that feeling of dread on you as like, will I make it out of this alive?
Yeah, and I definitely think the kind of foreboding and ominous feel is part
Hmm.
of the kind of emotion you're getting from the track. So, as far as the story behind this one, to kind of explain where it's coming from, this is basically the price of hubris. And so, the figure here
Oh.
we can assume is one of the figures we saw reanimated from the dead, and this is not necessarily taking place right after the previous scene, but sometime after. And my idea for this was the cult, let's call them the Wingless, taking Lava King's suggestion, which I think is a pretty cool name for a cult. Their whole deal was that they were trying to invoke this ritual using this power of like this rune in order to raise the dead to do whatever they wanted. And the rune is symbolic of whatever deity or whatever's bestowing them this power. This track is signifying that the deity is not happy that they did this, in that the
Ooh.
deity has determined that that's not why I wanted to give you folks power. You've overstepped your boundaries. Therefore, I am taking back everything that you have brought. And so the idea of reaching into the abyss is these constructs or these ethereal creatures they raise to do their bidding are being forcefully yanked and yeeted back into the void as the deity strips them of their power. Which is why it's kind of like it's not like an aggressive song. It's a lot more of kind of like a mournful and sad song, because this is kind of like the realization that, we faffoed.
Yeah. It also comes off as like as if there was some kind of hierarchy. So with the part that goes like do 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 do, it kind of feels like a god or like a powerful being over top of something.
Yeah, like
Or at least I felt that way.
like a deific voice
Yeah.
that's basically saying, here's what's happened, and the decree is that you are all in a lot of trouble.
You fucked up, bitch. That's
Lava
what
King
that said.
says, "Yay, I'm useful in the contribution in Raku musical narrative." Of course, you named one of the tracks on this album. I think Sour Lad named Death Door Ceremony. He's not here, but I have to ask him that later. But Lava King, you should write some lore for the cult based around the stuff that we've seen here. You should write like a synopsis of everything. That'd be really cool.
We're here for the cult stuff.
Well,
I'm here for the cult
we're
stuff.
here for interesting creative ideas. I don't think I want to be on record saying we're here for cult stuff. Nobody clip that out of context.
It's too late.
Too late. It's already happened.
Another thing of note, on the image itself, this suspended
Oh.
being, the runes on its wrists are the work of the deity, and the hands clawing up and preparing to drag this thing back through this portal into the abyss. I feel it's simple, but the idea is meant to be simple. But another thing of note on this song, I'm sure you folks heard it. This is the only song that features a saxophone.
Oh, that's what that was.
Yes, but it's a
Yeah.
saxophone, and it's got. I don't think I put a heavy effect on it. I think it might just be like layered with everything else, because it sounds like a really kind of like ethereal saxophone.
Yeah.
It's not like Kenny G, like
No, it's
smooth
not.
jazz saxophone. It sounds kind of, again, mournful and like melancholic and ominous, which is kind of difficult to pull off with a saxophone.
I liked it. I really did.
You could do anything with the saxophone, man.
You could. It's just got to be paired properly,
Yeah.
Lava says, disclaimer, Raku BPM does not affiliate with any cult-like actions or organization.
That's right. If the police
No
are watching
cults.
this later trying to incriminate me, I'm just a silly anime boy on the internet who makes funny mouth noises and occasionally tries to make music.
I'm just a bird.
I don't exist.
Ramen doesn't exist.
I'm here with a ball-shaped burb and a bowl of noodles that you can't actively see.
Yeah.
It's
He's a ghost. Ooh.
Woo!
Spooky.
all a rich tapestry.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this one was interesting to write because it's different in tone as we wind the album down.
Yeah.
And so here's what I'm gonna do. Oh, go ahead.
I do like the art for like the kind of shackles as it's being pulled back down. Like you can tell that it's a powerful being that's holding it back.
You mean the things on the legs, the hands that come up? Or you
No, I meant like on the wrists.
Oh, yeah, I really kind of tried to avoid going like crucifix Jesus positioning here because that really wasn't the point.
No.
So instead, I did the first letter of a popular youth organization.
Oh.
YMCA.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Sorry.
It's fine. It's again, it's all a rich tapestry, but I wanted to do something that wasn't just like look like chains, or we saw like in Horrify where it's like these kind of shackles. So that's why I went with the seals, the runic seals on the wrists. So
yeah, they look very powerful. Like it's something completely different.
I thought about animating this one to have the figure being grabbed, slowly being dragged lower. But I ran out of time.
Understandably.
So instead, I opted to animate the hands coming up in like waves instead.
Really good.
Okay, well let's close this one out. So what I'm gonna do for this last track, I'm gonna let it play, and then there's gonna be a bit that shows Bits' artwork for the thing, and then it's gonna fade out, and then once we're done, I'm gonna go back to that frame or that scene, and then we'll talk about that since it's kind of the last part here. And so with that, let us check out the final track of this year's Halloween pack, Bloodmoon Rites. This track is called Eternus Memoriam. let me back. Well, no, that's not what I wanted to do. I'm gonna freeze frame on the stuff with Bits' scenes is right at the end, and then we'll talk a little bit about this one. The problem is it's right at the end. There you go. I think that'll get it. Yep. So that was Eternus Memoriam, and to talk about the music real quick, since I'd like to spend some time talking at length about the scenes here, which hopefully you can all see. So this particular song, and just for background purposes for both of you two on the call, and also everyone watching, I finished writing all of the tracks for this album maybe about 2 months ago. It's been a bit. They've been done for a while, and I did some minor tweaking, and then I swapped out one of them a little bit along the way. But they've been done for a while. I tried to get everything done so I could focus on other things that are coming up. I'm mentioning this because you two, or any of you folks, have you ever heard of the band Sleep Token?
I haven't.
So you're muted if you're talking, Bits.
Sorry, no, I have not.
Okay. So Sleep Token is a British band. They're, all intents and purposes, a metal band, but their style blends so many different types of music together, and they're really fascinating. I can link some stuff to you guys off stream to check out, but they're really cool. And I just started listening to them a week ago because I like metal, and people been yelling at me for a long time on the internet to check them out. That last track is very similar in style and kind of theme to something they would write. And I just realized that, having spent a lot of the last week listening to their albums and then now listening to this stuff back, and I hadn't even heard of them when I originally wrote that song. So it's a kind of an interesting parallel.
I really liked the kind of like, I don't know how to explain the like wavy one
I
that
felt
kept
like I got
coming in
hit
and
with
out.
divine intervention. That's what
Yeah.
it felt like.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah, so I'm not going
Like,
to
we
tab
were on
back.
the receiving end of it.
Exactly. So the idea here, story-wise, and I'm not going to tab back to the image so we can keep Bits of scenes here on focus. But the image you see is like all these kind of souls, and then they're being bounded by the bird rune, and there's like a big runic circle that's different from all the other ones we've seen underneath them.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is those souls are the cultists, and after faffling and incurring the wrath of the deity that we would have seen in reaching into the abyss, they are being forcefully dragged into the ether, soul first. And the runes you see appearing around them are that they've used throughout the entire story to do whatever it is they've been doing, are now being used to basically imprison them. And so the title, I think Eternus is Latin. It's either Latin or it's like kind of like a slight corrupting of the word in eternity in Latin. But basically, like, the eternal memorial of these people is the last thing we see. And the song is supposed to reflect that. Like you said, the divine intervention, the idea that this is something higher than what these individuals were dealing with, and now they're reaping the consequences of their actions.
It is Latin. I looked it up.
Okay. I think that's where I got it from. It's something I've used in another project before, and I kind of repurposed it for this. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting closer because it's a bit more melancholic, but it also sounds very final. And like Lava King's saying, divine or demonic punishment. I think that's true. Did that kind of come across when you folks were listening to it?
Yeah, basically.
And so, any other thoughts before we kind of go over what these scenes that we're looking at here on screen are for?
I think it was a really good closing.
I've done that
like it
twice
definitely...
now. Yeah, on my Halloween albums, the last track has been a bit more like kind of like slower and somber. Last year's one was a bit more of a loose narrative compared to this year. I tried to tie things together a bit more tightly, But last year's track was kind of similar. It was called Laid to Rest, and it was a similar style of kind of like a slower and more like deliberate and almost kind of melancholic sound. This one sounds like actual, like you said, divine wrath, just not like
Divine
angry
intervention.
wrath.
Yeah.
This song is basically you fucked up.
Yep. And now your parent is disappointed, and your soul will suffer eternally as a result. So maybe don't do that.
Don't piss off your cult mom.
Cult mom, there you go. Lava Kings says, I don't know if this works, but I feel like the avian deities were distributed, like awoken unwillingly by the cult. We're disturbed.
Yeah.
Like awoken unwillingly. That's possible. The way I kind of see this is the cult knew of this deity, this entity's power, and had a pact with that deity to do their bidding, and then overstepped their boundaries. Like they got too high on their own sense of accomplishment, hence the hubris. And then the deity's like, nope, you done goofed. Taking everything away. But yeah, the idea of punishment is the last track, and then this is the finality of the punishment.
Yeah.
So for the scenes we're looking at here, I mentioned that Bits has been my creative consultant throughout this process. And when I brought them in earlier on and we were discussing across the 16 tracks, I basically broke down the track list so Bits could see all the titles. And we kind of thought about scenes that represented different aspects of each track that would be representative. And so what we have here is a snapshot of several scenes from the first half of the release primarily, but this is Bits' graphical representation and interpretation of what I kind of explained because they didn't hear the songs. I did some kind of like preview stuff earlier on, but Bits didn't hear the entirety
I didn't hear, no.
Yeah. And so the first one here, it's my cursor's on the Twitch broadcast. The first one here is Wandering Wraith. So this is kind of setting the idea that this spiritual entity kind of wandering aimlessly, which is really more of a mood set than like a plot setting for the whole story. And the environment actually kind of comes into play since a lot of what we see across these kind of takes place in like this forested like marshlands, which ends up coming into play in the fourth one here. And so the order here of the scenes is this one right here, the Wandering Wraith is the first one. This one down here with the group of cloaked figures around the bird rune, this is Coven Brand, the first time that rune iconography is introduced. And then the third one is corresponding to the fourth track, which is Afflicted Curse. For those that were here when we were talking about at the beginning, this is the physical representation of the person that this curse was cast upon. It's not someone from this group, which is signified by the different colored robes. And so this is sort of like the representation of, here's the curse, good luck with that. It's interesting because I didn't realize this until now, but the robes of the person here are similar to the robes of the kind of Cthulhu-esque people, which we've kind of identified as the cult overall. So that's kind of an interesting contrast in ideas, but you did these before I did mine, so.
Yeah. I was going off of like the red being for the cults. So I kind of went opposite of the green that we had also kind of tried to tie in. But
yeah, I think it's a cool effect though. It's very simple, but I think it communicates a connection as far as like the story, you know.
I'm gonna be honest with you. The first time that I drew Afflicted Curse, I did it in green, and then I was like, wait a minute. This is definitely supposed to be in red. So I do have an alternate version that's in green. But
I imagine it would look kind of like Jello.
It looked like the slime from like Ghostbusters.
So what you're saying is we now need an alternate album. We need B-side.
No. As much as I love the idea.
Instead of red, it's just all green.
But yeah, that one was fun to draw.
Yeah, I definitely.
Although his shoes, I didn't.
They're almost like
Like
slides or
bro's wearing
slip-ons.
like, yeah,
That's okay.
yeah,
That's why he was targeted by the cult. They didn't like his shoes.
yeah, ugly shoes.
And then the fourth one down here in the lower right corner, this is Marsh Tomb. And so interestingly enough, when I was coming up with the graphical representation for this track bits, I was using this rough layout and I kind of repurposed it to be a little bit more kind of like marshy as opposed to just
I
watery.
definitely saw that.
But
Yeah, I was like, how do I make a path in that? And then I just, yeah,
that would
kind of
have
struggled
been
with that part.
perfect the way you have it rendered here. The only change I would have made would have been to have this one kind of like you did for Wraith. We can't see it here, but you had it looping with an animation have like the back glowing, the background.
Yeah.
So I would have
Oh,
wanted
yeah,
that
that would have
effect.
looked really good in there too.
Yeah, on Marsh Tomb, like the red part you see there, have it like flashing in and out,
Hmm.
and then that would have been what I used for that one if we're going like track by track.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, sorry. My cat is like desperately trying to get my attention.
Sometimes it
You
be like
Father,
good?
that.
father, I crave violence.
Father, no.
Somebody say blood and sacrifice.
No.
Blood? Blood for the blood god?
No, he's just stinky and he wants cuddles.
That's
Anyway.
understandable. And so to kind of wrap up the significance of these scenes here, the concepts that Bits came up with ended up evolving into what we saw in the art that I did for each track. Like I said, Bits drew the original bird rune. It was supposed to be kind of like a simple design, but I felt like it was something we could repurpose and then use as like a constant theme throughout the whole thing, and ended up working out decently well. I think it's simple, but again, it does look like a bird. And if we're trying to do like additional workshopping on concepts, I think it'd be safe to assume that the deity that this group was allied with is some sort of bird deity.
Yeah.
I
I
don't know if
just
any.
like the idea of the deity being like faceless though. The way you kind of dealt with it with there being mystery behind it
Right, right.
is a really good way to go about that. Just cuz like you kind of made it seem almost as if that thing is like the size of a planet, like it's
It's
a
like an
big
elder
deity.
god, like a
Yeah, it's like an
large, like
elder
cosmic
god.
cosmic deity or cosmic god. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that the real question is thinking ahead to the future
Yes.
for next year. How to take some of the ideas that we've come up with here and figure out how to do something else, because each year it's been a slightly different focus.
Mhm.
And but I this one was the first time I've actually sat down and done like a lot of concept work and thoughts and bring in someone else to kind of
Mhm.
workshop the ideas. And so I want to definitely shout out Bits for their involvement in helping me come up with all the stuff we saw here. It was a very interesting process, and I'm very happy with the way everything turned out. And hopefully, the music has been interesting for all you folks.
Zombies.
We should name the cult.
The cult? Well, like we were
We should
talking
I
name
thought it
it
about,
was the wingless.
yeah, Lava King suggested the wingless, which I think is pretty cool.
the wingless. Ooh, I do really like that. Okay.
Especially if we're talking like, in theory, like an avian, vaguely avian deity, but the
You-
disciples and
you-
underlings are wingless.
These guys are all worshipping a flightless bird. Let's go.
It's just a big kiwi bird,
Literally an emu.
or an ostrich.
Yeah. I mean, they can fly a little bit.
Can they?
Lava King says, "Hey Raku, I got a theme to try this year for you. If you're interested, send it to me on Discord. I'm always down to check out ideas. By all means, send them my way."
Yeah.
But on that note, I think that concludes the release party for Bloodmoon Rites. Any final thoughts from you two? I know Ramen missed like the first half, so I'll have to go check that out.
More than half, bro. Like I
First
will be listening
two-thirds.
to it on Spotify. Yeah.
It's all good. I appreciate you jumping in with the assist and jump scaring us
Sir.
with Morse Critical, of course. So,
Yeah, that was.
someone should clip that. If that came across on the broadcast, someone needs to clip that.
Yeah, it
That's so
definitely
funny.
did. Were you planning on raiding anybody?
Yeah, let's go and send the good vibes
Do
to
you
someone
mind
else.
if I ask for somebody specific?
Not at all. Is it someone you know?
Yes. I just posted their link in the chat.
Luffy.
Lo-fi bird memes.
Luffy.
Lo-fi bird memes. Let me see if this will pull
Just
up.
one second. Excuse you? How dare you try to age gate me?
Age gate you? Oh,
Yeah.
playing
It's
Valorant.
like
He's
it's
probably
like,
saying
whoa,
swear
hold
words.
on. Like this content is like specifically that. I'm
Thank you,
like,
Iconic.
excuse you.
All right, I've got them locked
That
in.
was fun though. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a really interesting discussion. You know, we could probably talk for like another 2 hours, but I know everyone's got stuff they need to do. So in the
I am so
meantime,
tired.
much thanks again to Bits and Ramen for jumping on, and thanks to everyone else for hanging out. I will be back on Sunday, I believe.
Sunday.
I'll be
Be
dusting off
there.
Monster Hunter Rise and getting back into it. So,
Hey
Oh
yo, hold
yeah.
up.
Hunting the
When?
monsters. Sunday.
like 2 in the afternoon, West Coast time. I was gonna ask you if you wanted
Fuck!
to. Are you busy?
I'm off at 3 that day.
Sag.
I will be streaming for probably like 3 hours because I always stream Monster Hunter for a long time. So we can coordinate if you want to jump on and do some grinding. We can help push you
I'm
through
down.
ranks if you want.
At some point I gotta start some break, so yeah.
Somebody buy me Monster Hunter Rise, thanks.
If you're serious,
I'm dead ass. I don't actually.
Hmm.
I'm like,
Are you
wait.
gonna
Rock
actually
just
play it?
casually opens up Steam.
Like, that is such an expensive game. Wait, how much is
I
it?
thought it was on sale. Hold up.
Is it on sale right now?
There's a Halloween sale going on.
I'm
But I
gonna
don't
go
know
to
if
outro
Monster
while
Hunter is
we're
in there.
figuring this out before we raid. That's
Yeah.
funny. I'm just saying if people want to play a Monster Hunter and they need a means to get in there.
It's not on sale, but it's 50 Canadian. Which is not bad.
Maybe we can talk offline.
Okay.
All right, folks, let's go raid Lo-Fi Bird memes and spread the good vibes. Thanks again for hanging out. See you on the next one.
Bye, guys.
Let's go!